Yeah, welcome back to Manic episodes. We're really doing this? Okay, we're doing this. Charmed, Season 2, let's go. I guess I should start by saying that this season was an improvement over the last one in that they did try to change some of the faults. But I must also point out that it creates all new faults, so good one guys. One of the biggest issues with Season 1 was the monotony factor. Prue was always working at Buckland's, Piper was always stressing about something at the restaurant, and the issue of the day was usually dating related. Lots of knitwear was involved. This season, Prue still works at Buckland's, and oh how I love seeing that establishing shot week in and week out, but she takes on a new job later. Piper now constantly stresses about the club she owns, and the issue of the day is usually dating related. Also, there might be some magic in there. But the actresses have clearly gelled more, and the show seems to have gotten more of an idea of what it wants to do, so it's less boring than it used to be. As I covered last episode, the previous season ended with Prue's boyfriend, Andy McJellington, being killed in a very preventable way. This leaves room for Daryl to become the breakout star. Keep on trucking, Daryl. You don't need emotions or reasons to exist. Okay, I'm not giving the actor enough credit here. He just has absolutely nothing to work with. He essentially has Andy's role now of getting the girls into crime scenes and investigating every crime in the city, but without the love story to give him anything to do. He has one scene early on where he tells Prue that he'll look out for them because Andy asked him to, but he doesn't want to know what they're involved in. Spoiler alert, he finds out, but that doesn't change anything for us, or really for him, or... you know what, nothing really affects Daryl. We find out he's a father in a throwaway line, that's something. This episode involves a baby that's abandoned, and apparently the police just take abandoned babies to the station. That's upside down! Only women can take care of babies. Better let the charmed ones look after the kids so they can find out what magical snafu led to this. The baby can go back to the woman who abandoned it because it was just some plot about a ghost. It's cool. That's how the law works. Anyway, Prue's boyfriend died and she's super sad about it. So sad that she immediately starts flirting with dudes and checking out Neighbor Dan. Oh, Neighbor Dan. I'll get to you later. But yeah, Prue's anguish about Andy isn't done very well, though you can tell what they were going for. The guy she starts dating afterward is just the rebound. She only dates him just to be with someone. But they don't really play it up this way until it's convenient to the plot. It mostly leaves you wondering why she's dating the douchebag with a heart of gold. The character is Jack Sheridan, played by that guy you know from everything ever filmed, and he works at Buckland's too. He initially spends his time hitting on Prue creepily and being a red herring, which leads her to believe he might be a warlock. But then it turns out, in a shocking twist, that he has an identical twin! He's not evil, he's just using his twin brother who works in a mortuary to check out prospective women to have sex with. What a zany, douchebaggy turn of events. Don't worry guys, this is only mentioned in one episode and then his twin is never seen or mentioned again. Cool story, bro. This whirlwind romance lasts about half the season. I wouldn't get too attached. Prue gets to do a whole slew of stupid shit this season, and I can give no better example of this than when she turns into a man. Yeah, they went there. It's like they forgot that men have larger necks to balance out the giant shoulders, and you know what, this is the least of this episode's problems. If you ever wanted proof that the show is sexist, watch this episode. Prue gets to find out what it's like to be a guy, and like, why don't guys do this or that, and whoa, men don't put the toilet seat down, and that's crazy! Also this.
Awesome truck.
You know, I think you really are becoming a man.
They tried, but not very hard. She goes undercover as an assassin in a really inane plot that brings back Billy Drago's Fear Demon character, because apparently they can just come back. I can't say I was terribly surprised after his insultingly easy exit. Why he's gotten mobsters to hire an assassin, I can't recall, but what I do know is that it's mostly an excuse to put Prue in a lot of leather and set up this flaccid romance with her and the lead mobster. This wouldn't even be worth mentioning if it weren't for the awful follow-up where Mob Guy gets out of jail, kidnaps her, and they fall in love because they're both dreamers.
I would say that you're beginning to strike me as a dreamer.
Even criminals dream, Prue, and that's something to think about. He goes back to jail and is never mentioned again, by the way. Somewhere along the line, Prue decided to become a photographer. Oh, and she has this dick photographer she looks up to, and I guess they abandoned that after one episode. This was clearly to get the character away from the same damn place all the time, but the way they go about it seems tacked on and rushed. Prue has never mentioned photography or wanting to be a photographer, then all of a sudden, she quits Buckland's to pursue her photography dream. This is some of the worst TV writing I've ever heard, and I desperately need to show you this to emphasize how terribly this was done.
Prue, you dreamt of winning the Pulitzer in photography back in college. You never wanted to work in the museum or at the auction house. That's something you did for us so we could keep the house.
She just worked at Buckland's so they could keep the house? Just to get them by? Holy shit, are you even trying, Charmed? Prue did not just work at an art gallery as like a receptionist or something. She was well versed in history, could distinguish real pieces from fakes, and could fluently speak Latin. This was not like taking up a Burger King job to make ends meet. That takes years of experience and dedication and, quite frankly, probably more years of experience than she's been alive. You don't just do that to make ends meet! Holy crap, this is stupid.
You know, I didn't want them to die. I just wanted them trapped in that house forever.
Yes, eternal torment is better than death. Also, Prue had a cream transporting power in the first episode that she never used again. Must have given it up for the astral projection she gains this season. There's an episode where she tries to help a guy whose daughter was murdered. They know who the killer is, but no one wants to speak up out of fear, and there's nothing anyone can legally do. Prue realizes she can't use her powers to punish people, so she has to find another way to get him caught. Excuse me, they can't punish people? Even if it means saving lives? Isn't that what they do, like, every episode? Prue did have a sort of resolution to her fear of becoming like their mother. They go to the lake where she drowned and discover that it was some sort of water demon warlock thing. Whatever. The point of the story is that they can vanquish it and have peace of mind, which is huge for Prue. They also discover that their mother was in love with her white lighter, who became a human after he failed to protect her. This is a parallel, of course, to Piper and Leo, who are currently in an off phase in their relationship. Leo can't be with Piper unless he clips his wings, and they both feel he'd do more good as a guardian angel. This leads to Piper's fairy tale romance with Neighbor Dan. Oh, Neighbor Dan. Why? Why, Neighbor Dan? Okay, here's the thing with Neighbor Dan. He's pretty much the most useless main character I've ever seen in a show. I'm not even sure why he's in the opening credits. He does absolutely nothing of value. Even more baffling is the choice to include his niece in the credits, as she somehow does even less than he does. These characters were clearly introduced for a storyline that never happened, so they're dropped unceremoniously and without any sort of payoff. Neighbor Dan moves in with his niece Jenny, who seems to be there for some future reason, but then she leaves after 4 episodes. This girl warranted an opening sequence credit, people. Leo didn't even get that for a while, and he was in most of season 1. She doesn't even get an on-screen exit. Neighbor Dan just throws in some line about her moving back in with her folks. The official explanation for this is, I shit you not, the writers took her out when they realized she served no real purpose. So, whether she was in an abandoned storyline or was never meant to have a purpose at all, it's still stupid. This, of course, leaves Neighbor Dan free to be the stock love interest at the moment, a role that could easily be filled by a piece of cardboard. But more baffling than the inclusion of Neighbor Dan in this season was the reaction hardcore Charmed fans had to him. See, they really didn't like anyone getting between Piper and Leo, and so they formed a group of anti-Dans. I'm not making this up, anti-Dans are actually a thing. One comment read that he was a greasy, butt-crack poo flap, which is the greatest insult I have ever heard. And it's all over a guy who has the personality of a sponge. Neighbor Dan might be insultingly useless, but I kind of love him now. The writers briefly have Phoebe and Piper fight over him, but Piper wins out because she is an incredibly selfish, awful person this season. It's really hard to feel sympathetic towards her here. She starts dating Neighbor Dan because she can't be with Leo, but when Leo becomes human again, she's like, well, you know, dating Neighbor Dan now. There is absolutely no lead up to this relationship. One minute the girls are fighting over who gets him, the next Piper and Neighbor Dan are making out and apparently an item now. This was an off-screen get-together, I guess. This leads to eating cereal together and immediately talking about moving in. None of it is handled in a natural way. It's painfully obvious it was written in as a lame attempt at drama. He's some sort of handyman or construction guy too, because guys sure do like fixing stuff. But clearly Piper doesn't care about him in the slightest, and the show makes no qualms about telling us this constantly. She directly says at one point that her heart lies with Leo. There is absolutely nothing stopping her from getting together with Leo at this point, and perpetuating this thing with Neighbor Dan is just awful and mean. It takes her until near the end of the season to break up with him, just as Leo has a change of heart and becomes a white lighter again. Doo! But they decide to work it out anyway? The clipping of the wings thing stems from what could have been one of the stronger episodes of the season had they not added in one really dumb element. Remember, if it sounds like a good idea, Charmed will find some way to make it stupid. Piper contracts a contagious disease that sends her into a coma and will eventually kill her. Phoebe and Prue decide to use a spell to heal her, which leads to terrible consequences. Now, this could have been a great premise. Disease is not something you can fight, and Prue and Phoebe cure Piper knowing full well that this will lead to bad things. They're playing God at this point. This could spread the disease and get others killed, and it's not for them to decide who lives and who dies. So of course, they put the disease into a ninja action figure that comes to life and stabs it into people. I just don't understand how they even came up with that idea. Even in my worst writing slumps, I would have never come up with an idea so stupid next to a premise with such potential. It's hard to take their dying sister seriously, knowing that this episode featured a magical ninja action figure. You didn't even try, Charmed. Anyway, they realize what's happened, and Piper willingly takes the disease back to save everyone else. This leads to our favorite Deus Ex Machina, Leo, who heals her despite orders from his higher-ups not to interfere. His powers are horribly inconsistent in this show. It's hard to keep track of what he can and can't do. Apparently, he can only heal things when the higher-ups allow him, and he's meant to, which means he can't heal bullshit like hangovers or poison ivy or whatever. Except later on, when Piper has like a cut on her finger and he does it anyway. He heals all sorts of bullshit on this show, including things that aren't even living. And what happened to his random light bulb power or flying abilities? Those could have been really handy later on. Speaking of things that would have been helpful later on, the White Lighters have a memory dust to protect magic exposure. Leo says it's only used in the direst of circumstances, but I guess dire doesn't really count next season when people like die and stuff. You know they set up demons that kill humans who try to prove the existence of demons this season? Where the hell are they the rest of the time? Leo's apparently not assigned as their White Lighter anymore to prevent his romance with Piper, but then later on he is again. I'm not even sure who was their White Lighter in the meantime. Did they have one? Were they just screwed if something happened? This leads to the White Lighter elders clipping Leo's wings as punishment, so he's free to be a bartender at Piper's bar and watch as she continues to date neighbor Dan. But don't worry guys, in case you were wondering if Leo's an awful person too, he makes it clear he will keep trying to be with her even though she says she's dating neighbor Dan now. Very forward, these people. Neighbor Dan doesn't come off smelling like roses either. After Piper dumps him, he gets dirt on Leo and discovers that he died in World War II. When he tells Piper Leo isn't who he says he is, Piper says she knows and she's cool with it, and he's like, wah, but I thought you'd be mad. Well, back to the woman I was immediately on a date with after a breakup. He does eventually find out about Piper being a witch, which he can't handle and wishes he'd never known. But don't worry, this plot was solved by French Stewart as a genie. You know, if I ever have to say the sentence, "This plot was solved by French Stewart as a genie," I can't help but feel this speaks volumes about the quality of the program. This was our season finale, by the way, in case you had any misconceptions about this being a filler episode. The plot involves this group of bad guys called the Triad, who will become more prominent in the next season, as they send out a genie to get rid of the charmed ones in exchange for his freedom. Wacky hijinks ensue, none of which I feel are worth mentioning after French Stewart Genie has been let out of the bag. Eventually, this leads to becoming friends with the genie, and Piper wishes Dan can forget about what he discovered and move on with his life. So after spending the remainder of the season throwing in one line for contractual obligations and having absolutely nothing else to do, neighbor Dan moves away and the storyline is promptly forgotten. Thanks, Season 2. You were really worth it. Ending on the French Stewart as a genie plot begins Charm's bizarre tradition of doing a season-ending epic the episode before the actual ending. The episode before that, they stopped the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Of course, the episode also featured shots like this, but the point still stands that they stopped the friggin' end of the world. And they end on French Stewart as a genie? It's not like this is an airing order thing, there's plot elements that clearly come one after the other. While I'm mentioning fine charm traditions, in this episode, one of the main characters dies for the millionth time on this show.
Teenage Prue is the one that got killed, not adult Prue.
Fee you! Deus Ex Machina, away! You'll be glad to know that Piper's boring restaurant subplots have been replaced with boring music interludes. She, Phoebe, and Prue open up a club together called P3, and it's painfully obvious it was written in to promote bands. It doesn't make any sense that Piper would open up a club anyway. She was a chef. She quit so she could be her own boss and run a restaurant of her own, so she opens a club where they don't even serve food? The hell? As for Phoebe, she's moved along wherever the plot needs her. She volunteers at a hospital fairly regularly, it seems, but just for one episode. They act like this is something she just did, and it kinda confused me. But you do get to see Misha Collins in a hilarious early role in that episode. Here's the long and short of it. His father has decoded a stone which holds the secret to everything in the universe, but only like half of it, I guess, and Misha's character has decoded the other half. These bad dudes want the rest of the code, and Misha decides that he must destroy it to stop the information from getting into the wrong hands. And so, he and Phoebe walk into a museum to smash the case open, stop to talk for like 30 seconds, and then he easily grabs it and throws the stone down. No one makes a move to stop them or even takes a step toward them, not even the minimal effort. And they just walk casually out and it's never addressed again. So, no security cameras got this? No one's like, hey dude, you just smashed an ancient and priceless relic? There were a lot of people there. Just not even gonna throw in a quick explanation at the end or anything? She teams up with Cupid for a bit to discover why she can't find love. This makes no sense in the context of a show that goes through men like dirty clothes. This plotline involves this guy who loves spreading hate, and they gotta put a stop to that.
He's killing love.
It's not quite as stupid as when Love and Curses did it, which I guess is the only thing we can be grateful for. Nice Pocahontas outfit there, Phoebe. I love that this episode largely hinges on Cupid getting Prue back with Twin Boy and Piper back with Dan, two romances that clearly stood the test of time. Oh, Neighbor Dan. Why, Neighbor Dan? Phoebe becomes a student this season, which really hits the point home that the show desperately wants to be Buffy. Good thing Prue took up that art job so they could keep the house and somehow afford a college education now. Phoebe switches places with her past self at one point, and I'm not sure what exactly is going on there. She gets attacked and finds out that it's her past life coming to haunt her, one which will kill her if she doesn't see what happened. She does nothing to change the past, but apparently she's ended whatever danger she was in. They seem to imply that her past self being evil means that she'll be evil too, which I'd say doesn't make any sense either, but apparently Prue was destined to be a photographer, so whatever. Their numerous past lives apparently always hang out in the same circles, but they're acting like these people are their ancestors, which is not what a past life is, at all. Oh yeah, Neighbor Dan's there. I'm sure he'll be in their lives for fucking eternity.
Hurry up with that giggle water, Jake. We have thirsty people waiting.
Don't ever try to do a period piece again, Charmed. So hey, did you know the Halliwells have a favorite aunt who knows about their magic? She shows up for one episode and pawns their powers for her youth, but she has a change of heart and gets killed. The girls don't try to see if she's okay or even mention it by the end of the episode. Guess she wasn't that much of a favorite. And Phoebe has a crush on a 1950s movie star, and one time these monkeys got their powers. I don't need to elaborate on any of these plots, just thought you should know about them. Also, please enjoy this shot of Oscar-nominated actress Amy Adams. Okay, so here's where I have to give Charmed some credit. I hate to admit it, but this season actually has a good episode. And I'm not just throwing it a bone to be nice, there was an episode that I genuinely found good in this. And it all hinges on dog shit. No, really. Remember, they always have to add one stupid thing. It begins when the Charmed ones are pissed that their neighbor is leaving dog shit in front of their house. They decide to use magic to show the guy what's what. This would count as using magic for personal gain, which is a no-no despite it totally being what they use it for all the time. Phoebe has a vision of her future self being burned at the stake, so the three of them transport themselves into their future bodies to find out what happened. The future they find is one where they're more powerful, they've grown apart as people, and there's a massive witch hunt. Piper is formerly married to Leo and has a daughter with him. Prue owns Bucklands and has blonde hair, and Phoebe is about to be executed for murder. Piper finds herself wondering why she drifted apart from Leo and wanting to protect her daughter, who has magical powers as well. She ends up binding her powers, just like their grandmother did to protect them. It's an interesting parallel and a good exploration of Piper and Leo's relationship without magical handyman powers. Prue's story is probably the weakest in that it's mostly about her being lonely without no man. She's also drifted apart from her sisters, but who cares? We all know she isn't making it past season 3. The really great part of the episode is Phoebe's story. She spends the whole time waiting to get rescued from prison, but Leo tells her that there is no rescue. She has to face the consequences of what she's done. Someone she cared about, they don't elaborate on who, was murdered, so she exacted revenge by killing the person who did it with magic. Once Phoebe realizes this, she knows she isn't supposed to escape either. Prue and Piper arrive to break her out, but she convinces them to let her stay, ending with her burning alive before they return to the present. Oh, and the guy leaving the dog shit was the one leading the witch hunt, thus teaching the Charmed ones not to use magic for personal gain. Which they do anyway. What I liked about this episode is that they didn't take the easy way out. They realize they have the potential to do harm and that there are consequences. They don't attempt to solve anything in their possible future because they weren't meant to save anyone there. They were supposed to learn from what they saw. The writing was uncharacteristically thoughtful, layered, and, quite frankly, it's a window into what the show could have been. If this had been Charmed, I'd be singing a whole different tune right now. But as it stands, it's a nugget of gold in a sea of regret. Wish me luck, folks. I've got a feeling it's all downhill from here.
See there sarcasm in my smile. You better smile.
What are you wearing, Phoebe? It didn't have to be this way! It didn't have to be this way!